Hi, I'm Sergey Gordeev, an Emmy-winning journalist and a TV show host, and today we're continuing our conversation with Natliya Rusetskaya. Before we go on, I'd like to share that this will be an adult conversation on adult topics, so we only invite you to join us if you're 18 years of age or older. This will be part 3 in our series Ask This Sexpert, and today we'll talk to Natliya about your questions. We've asked all of you, our viewers, to submit questions. You did, so we'll dive right in. But actually, the first question I have is it's actually one of your questions: is what exactly is a sex therapist, which you are? Like, what goes on in your office?
Well, I think it's a very important question because it's a mystery still for multiple people, and especially people calling from other countries or even local people. And sometimes, I come end up being in some awkward situations where some people are calling me and they expect me either to perform striptease during my session or do some other acts, and I'm like, I'm not sure that you're calling the right place, or
Well,
some
I mean, look, if somebody's actually
massage.
having very technical questions, we'll dive into some very specific questions, like how do you demonstrate your your answers to these questions? Like, what
Well, I
do you
underline
sometimes do they demonstrate their sexual problems? Do you demonstrate how to solve them? Like, how does that work?
they don't do it in front of me.
Okay.
I usually talk and talk again during my sessions. It does not involve any observing of couples or individuals doing anything sexual in front of me. No participations included, but I could tell you exactly what I was talking about in sessions,
Okay, so
right?
in fact, this will be like a group sex therapy session, if you will.
Kind of,
All
yeah.
right. So you talk about it, but no
Yes.
demonstrations.
So I talk about their bodies, about sexual expressiveness, about how to give yourself a permission to be more sexual. We explore their religious background, how it could be affecting the current sexual ability to express themselves. We sometimes could get into traumatic past sexual experiences, see how they affect current relationships, help them to heal those past sexual traumas, challenge the current belief systems, and help with general communication, conflict resolution, and with sexual communication for people to be able to express more clearly, more openly their preferences, their likes and dislikes.
So it kind of sounds like sort of like psychotherapy as it relates to sexual life,
Yes, definitely,
and with the
definitely.
goal of improving it, of course.
Yes, yes.
So look, you guys, you guys are really specific. So we'll just dive in because we just made a list of all the questions you've sent in. So question number one is, what is the G spot and how do you find it?
Okay, actually brought some tools from my
Okay.
office with me
All
today.
right.
So I
I love
have penis, I have
it.
vagina over
These are your
here.
office supplies.
Yes, they're very soft and very user friendly. I really like this too. So I will be talking about G spot initially. So, and I'll use this to demonstrate. So G spot could be found only if a woman is in aroused state. If she is not aroused at all, it could be impossible, pretty much impossible to feel anything, because it should have a spongy feeling when you stimulate it. And how you find it, you usually put either one finger or two fingers inside of the vaginal upper wall and touch this vaginal upper wall, and it's about like 2 inches behind the back of the pubic bone. And you use this type of movement like as if you're doing like come here movement, like almost like tickling her from the inside, and the woman can actually find it even herself
Hmm.
also when she is in a more aroused state. And a partner could do it as well. And I like how Taoist Master Mantak, how he explains the process. He says if you don't have a woman, real woman, you can buy 2 pieces of tofu,
Hmm.
soft tofu. You put your fingers between those 2 pieces of tofu, and then you do those like tickling movements, and that's how you practice. And you make sure that you don't destroy your tofu, that you do it in a very kind of gentle way.
So you're looking for hardening, right? Like for
Yes,
a
and like more
more.
like of a spongy feeling.
Uh,
And Dr. Graftenberg, after who G-spot is being called, he identified it, but it's not a scientific fact that it does exist actually, because some
so wait,
women.
so it's not a scientific
No, it's not
thing?
proven. It's not proven, but many women report feeling more of that pleasurable sensation when being stimulated this way. And sometimes it could be a little bit to the right, to the left, So you really need like to play with your finger and see and put some pressure also on the vaginal walls and see where it feels particularly pleasurable.
So the way for partners to do it is for for a partner to try it, and
Yes,
for the woman to now. Is it only
not
women
going
who
not going
have
there
G
directly.
spots? Do men have G spots or no?
I'm not aware of those.
Okay, so first of all, it's something
Yeah,
inside
a female body.
the female body that.
Female body, and also some women can have a little bit of liquid that we call ejaculate liquid, also from feeling pleasure of that G spot being stimulated, and they could have even G spot orgasms from
Okay.
that pleasurable spot being touched, explored, and pressured and
Hmm.
pressed upon.
So really, the only thing to do is just to explore and kind of
Yeah.
communicate clearly about it. But like, it's kind of weird. Like, does some people are feeling self-conscious about that kind of communication. How would you suggest that? Like, oh, right there to the left or the right, like you got it. Like, how would you suggest
Like
to
verbally,
communicate?
you rarely using the language and not being embarrassed about it, because if you are not gonna guide your partner, right, if you're not gonna give any feedback, you might never like have a chance to feel more pleasure, right? You're limiting yourself and you're limiting your partner to really having a better kind of compass or better map towards your
Right, right,
body,
right.
I
So it's,
think,
it's all about communication. Always, like everything, even
so much
previous
is about.
conversations, it all comes back to actually talking to each other, and kind of,
Totally.
you know, maybe like agreeing at the beginning, hey, like the goal here is for partners, right? Like for me to
Yeah.
make you feel better. So I would actually love it and appreciate it if you
Hmm.
let me know if I'm in the right, like maybe they make sounds or
Yeah.
something. If the words are too
Yeah.
like, oh, left, right, like
Yeah,
sounds
sounds
are
is
good.
great, or just even the body language, right? Like if you take the hand of your partner and like so like on press it
Guide
here,
it,
here,
yeah.
or use your finger to and put like his or her finger and guide it and say like like just do like a little bit to the left, to the right, or a little bit put a little bit more pressure. Why? While I put more pressure on the top of my
Uh-huh.
pubic bone and so on and so forth. So it
Got
could
it.
be just a lot of fun. So why do you want to limit yourself from
Right,
not
right,
having
right.
all of this fun?
Okay, so next one is: are men's breasts sensitive? Are they as sensitive as wieners? Okay, so what as their penis?
Yeah.
So
Could be, it could sound maybe like as a basic or funny question, ridiculous question, but it's not. I prescribe certain exercises where um, males' breasts will be explored at home by their
mhm,
partners, and some feel nothing.
mhm,
Some are very much aware that their nipples and the breast area is very sensitive. Some feel very embarrassed
mhm.
for that place to be touched at all. And some people say like, oh, it was such a huge self-discovery for me, like about my sexuality, because there's so much pleasure over there. I had no idea. So it's again,
Well, it's interesting because there's a whole kind of, not, I want to say, culture around like women's breasts, right?
yes, that
But
only they could be sensitive
right,
and
and
nipples.
specifically like nipples on
Hmm.
women, like
Yeah,
how there are ways to stimulate them, and different women prefer
yes,
different ways, to stimulate them. Some harder, some softer, some different, like
definitely.
with your mouth, with your whatever,
Teeth.
some
Yeah.
some like that. And so I guess, what would you say, like for men, like exploring that area, like not just the actual, I guess pectorals, right, but like the
Hmm.
actual nipples for
Hmm.
men? Would
Yeah.
you How would you guide men into like finding pleasure in that area?
I don't, I did not come across with men who would just do their own exploration of nipples and chest area by themselves, but their partners could use similar strategies. They could use the tongue for licking, teeth for biting. You could pinch the nipples, you could make circles around them, and around the whole chest area, you could do like deep tissue touch
Hmm.
and see if it resonates with you, and not being ashamed or embarrassed of that, because it could be also like again another level of pleasure, this time for men.
So again, like for men and women, the answer is the same: like explore and guide your partner in doing that, and
Hmm.
don't be
And
afraid
yeah,
to ask
and
for something that you like and that you've discovered actually gives you
yeah,
pleasure.
and it's not gender specific, here,
Right, right, right.
and pleasure is the measure. I think we spoke
Pleasure is the
about
measure,
it
yeah.
before.
Well, here's a question. Why do I have unwanted erections now as an adult. What should I do about them? I was gonna say enjoy them, but I mean, is that a thing? Is that a problem with which people come to you in your office?
Not really. I think it's more of an like not a random, but like unusual question. But let's look at it, right? Let's see what happens. I mean, I think it's totally normal to have sometimes unpredictable reactions. And of course, teenagers have them much more frequently because it's less under control, kind of, and they're more prone to feel aroused under like any being exposed to any like very subtle level of stimulation. For adults, it's in a much more controlled state, but still, it could be your experience of your penis touching the material of the clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or certain furniture, like rubbing against it, or having any type of mental stimulation, different fantasies. Somebody is passing by on the street and you might have this unwanted erection. So, and actually, sometimes it could be also because of some urethral problems, because of infections sometimes, or
Oh, so it
they
could be
need
an
to,
actual
yeah,
health-related thing.
sometimes, very seldomly, but kind of if a guy, kind of a man, he really wants to figure out how to uh, slow it down, right, and how to get rid of it. So I know like a lot of people say like think about some disgusting experience or something, like how Michael Jackson is making his money or something, but I don't recommend it because then you might have like the sour expression of your face
Well,
besides the unwanted turn on.
I mean, look, I mean, I think a lot of it is just hormonal, right? Like, so it's that happens when you have a lot of certain hormones present in the body, and that's why like
Yes,
teenagers
good,
who are
good and
bursting with
healthy.
hormones,
Yes,
they experience it. So I say,
but
if it's not a problem, enjoy. If it is a
yeah,
problem, go see a doctor, right?
yeah, but also kind of maybe some more like of a neutral recommendations. You can think about something that I think it's pretty much guaranteed will stop the erection if you think about possible kind of your own tax audit or root canal,
Oh my God.
or what else could be like some like very
Think of
unpleasant.
taxes and your
Yeah,
erection will go away.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah,
Tips from the sex
yeah.
sexpert. Like think of taxes to get rid of
Tax
your
audit,
erections.
yes, even
Tax
worse than
audit. There you go.
taxes.
That's very specific. Okay.
Yes.
Tax audit. Okay. Like the most unsexy. Maybe some people
Yeah,
get aroused by
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
tax audits.
yeah, like
Maybe that's what gets them on,
something very
gets them
unsexy.
turned on. Well, okay. Think of something that's unsexy to you.
Yes.
All right. During oral sex, I sometimes worry that I will urinate and ejaculate at the same time. What do I do to prevent this?
So I assume it was a male who was writing the question.
I mean, can a female like kind of have an orgasm and pee at the same time? Is that a thing?
Actually, physiologically, thankfully, nature did it in a very smart way. So it's the same canal, the same tube, this urethra, where the semen is traveling through the same tube and urine. But the nature created the man in a way where it does not want the acid of the urine
Hmm.
to weaken your sperm.
Oh,
Yeah, so they don't kind of clash, they don't overlap. So when you're almost on the edge of ejaculation, that internal valve
hmm.
inside of urethra it closes and only semen can go through,
Oh,
urine
I see.
cannot.
So it's
So
like physically impossible
physically,
to mix the two.
thankfully, yes.
Okay.
So
All
which is
right.
great. I
All
think
right.
it's like so you shouldn't be afraid of that
Okay. That's good.
possibility. You
Good to
can
know.
relax about that.
Please relax. Everybody, don't worry. Why do different people respond differently when they're touched in the same way? That's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
because right, like because if you learn some I don't know tricks in your sex therapy classes and then your or sessions rather, and then
And then it doesn't work at
right,
home, right? Oh, well, the truth is that no one knows.
right,
No one can tell, but at the same time, please remember that everybody's body is different. I know like tons of people who really like being scratched with the nails of the sexual
to me that
partner.
sounds painful.
Painful, and I feel disgusted actually. I feel like irritated with that. I was like,
Right,
oh, not painful,
interesting,
but just
right? Like
disgust.
okay,
Yeah,
so what you're saying is that different people respond differently to different kind of
totally.
stimulation. So I
and
guess it's a
and you
matter
know,
of
and it really matters like how, like what do you know about your partner and what is enjoyable. For example, like again, somebody could love your toes being licked. For somebody it could be something like not even approachable, not
right,
possible, like again could be disgusting, could be not allowed for different reasons, so on and so forth. Ears being kissed or
right.
licked, right? Or just
For some people,
anything. Yeah,
it's arousing. Others, it like
super arousing.
tickles,
Yeah,
and it makes them like laugh and lose their
yeah,
arousal, right? So
yeah.
it's so I
Mm-hmm.
guess again the answer like is again
Communication
communication, well,
and
and
a
exploration
response.
and
Totally.
curiosity, because I
Hmm.
think if you're because a lot of people have issues of like shame around sex
Yes.
conversations, right? Like
Hmm.
even we just noticed that um, you know all of these questions because we posted on Facebook and we asked all of you to submit your questions, but all of the questions came through private messages, not like in comments underneath the
Nobody
actual
was
post.
writing to me that much on the social media. Exactly. It was
So,
just
but everybody, so
privately.
so the fact that pretty much all of these questions came through private messages, it kind of
Hmm.
still speaks to the fact that people are kind of not ashamed, but there is a little bit of a taboo. There
Yeah.
is a kind of a vulnerability
Shame.
about
Shame to
talking.
show up publicly with those questions where your name is attached,
Right.
how to do it anonymously, how to verbalize it. Maybe it's not okay to ask such a question. Yeah, but
Well,
I'm glad
again,
we
like,
opened up that
well,
floor
right.
for the questions.
How would you ask a person like, when I do this, how does it make you feel? Like, what words do you recommend for people? Because if people feel self-conscious, like, how do you help them relax into it? Are there words you
I
suggest?
think the way you just phrased it, it's like the perfect way to ask, like being like direct and gentle, but that expressiveness and being explicit about it is super important.
Because like it's almost counterintuitive because sometimes people are like, oh, the more we talk about it, the more we kill it. But actually, you say no.
No, not that. I mean, sometimes it could be too much
Right.
of a discussion, too much about details about specifics, not needed. It could kill it. But
Right.
being as direct and brief, like you just demonstrated, I think it's perfect.
Okay.
Or maybe like do a little bit of, in advanced conversation, like there are certain things that I feel uncomfortable. So vulnerability as well, uncomfortable to talk about openly, but it's been bothering me and I'm curious, what do you actually feel, or where it
Right.
feels better for you, or things like acknowledging your own feelings
Maybe
as the
also like
first
talking
step.
about sex not during sex because that may
Yes,
be like a vulnerable space and like
super
conversations during
vulnerable.
sex might actually
Yes.
kill the excitement or whatever. Okay, so that's a good tip to talk about sex not during sex when you're relaxed, when you're
Yes,
kind of
when
in a space
when
where you can have a
when it's an open,
yeah,
close space between you and your
right,
partner,
right,
when you're not preoccupied by
right,
something.
right. Okay, so let's see. How can my husband truly enjoy my body with these breasts? He says they turn him on, but I feel very self-conscious. Well, so I'm assuming this probably a question came from a woman.
Yes, yes.
And it's interesting because women, I've heard this before, like where a woman, or a man, if a person just doesn't feel themselves to be attractive, right? Like they look in the mirror and they don't go like, oh, I really love that body. That's an attractive body, right? Like if we feel self-conscious about something about our body, sometimes we have a hard time believing that somebody else does.
Totally.
If we don't find ourselves attractive, how
Yeah,
can anyone else?
yeah.
So what would you say to that, to
Well,
help
and
with that?
like I wanted to even apologize. I giggled when you read the question because, um, not because of that specific question, but because like I meet like so many women really in the office and outside of the office who ask the same stuff, and regardless of the size of and shape of the breast. That's why I even giggled, because it's like it's true
There's like
about.
a laugh of recognition
Yeah, I was like,
because so
whoa.
many people
Yeah,
ask
like
about
I
it.
have my boobs are too big, my boobs are too small, or my breasts are like too saggy after I was breastfeeding, or whatever else is the issue. And there's frequently, almost always, like something about it. But
Right.
I just wanted to pinpoint for ladies, like please remember that while it's true that your partner might be more into specific size of breasts that could be attractive for him or for her, but also it's not just about that. There are different variations in the shape of the breast, in the size, in the smell of them. in the taste of the breast. And maybe in this
Right.
case, the husband, he's just happy that the breast belongs to you, not to
Right. I
anybody
was
else. So
gonna
he's
say,
just
like,
like
these are your breasts. Like,
yeah,
if
they're
he's in
your
love with you,
breasts.
then he loves everything about you, like including
Totally.
your breasts. So whatever it is that your body is,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
it's an
it.
interesting question.
That's
Like,
it.
how do you believe somebody when they say they're attracted to you? It's kind of it's a very deep, actually, question. How do you learn to like yourself? Because if you don't
Well,
like yourself, then it's hard. Not don't like yourself, but if you don't believe that you're an attractive person, then it's hard to believe that somebody else might think that.
of course, of course. And you're asking now, it's a much deeper question,
Yeah.
more for like longer, I would say, term of therapy, maybe at least not even 8 to 12 sessions, maybe
Right.
much longer. And of course, then if you really want your partner to enjoy you fully, then it's a good first step to yourself, enjoy yourself fully,
Yeah.
on multiple
Exactly. So like
levels.
I was gonna say like my prescription would be like learn to love yourself, and then it
Yeah.
won't be hard to believe
But
that other
but
people love you too.
yeah, but it's easier said than done, right?
Yes, I from experience
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you
Yeah,
that, that's for sure.
actually, I came across my colleague recommended this book recently, Calling in the One, and I
Mhm.
could actually show it at the end of the interview if you want. And it's like a 7-week program
Mhm.
how to attract the love of your life.
Right.
But the reality is that it's not just about how to attract another person in your life. It's a good program with exercises, weekly specific techniques. What can you do for yourself to develop more of that self-love? And it's a good resource for
Yeah.
multiple people, actually.
Well, and it's true, like that when you see somebody who's really comfortable with who they are, like somebody who truly enjoys themselves, that becomes attractive. Like you're
Yes,
attracted to people
yes.
who feel attractive,
Mm-hmm.
who enjoy themselves. They radiate that kind of a joy, like that, that just really is
Yeah,
magnetizing. So
totally. So you
yeah,
can
so
learn
I
how to
guess
be more magnetic
there
for
we go.
yourself, and then
By falling in love with
for
yourself.
yes, and then for you first for yourself, and then for those who you do want to attract into your life.
Okay, next question. Is it my imagination, or do some people taste different than others? Okay, that's a very specific. And I guess I don't know. I wonder if it's a man or a woman who submitted that question.
Well, it could be both genders asking me this question in real life. And yes, like even like we all have different pheromones, different secretions of the body, and like semen of the man could be tasting differently depending on the person and on the diet.
I was gonna
If you're
say, like I
yeah,
read somewhere
if
that
if
don't
you're a
don't eat like asparagus
vegetarian.
or something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah. Like it's
kidding.
like very stinky flagellation from what I remember after asparagus. But if you're a vegetarian, the semen will be more sweeter of the
Okay,
taste. If you're a meat eater, it could be more salty.
interesting.
Yes.
Right.
And yes, like even like each woman would taste differently her secretions. I even heard recently somebody mentioned to me that a man has such a high sensitivity to the smell. He said that he could not kiss a girl when he was younger and dated like multiple girls, if he did not like the smell from her nose, like nasal secretions, how he
Well, I mean, like,
described it to me.
is there a snot from coming from a woman, or like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like just the way her breath came out of her
Not
nose, like
even the
what?
breath, but even like the scent from the nostrils.
Wow,
So if you're
that's
super
some high percent.
sensitive, yeah, then
I
it
read
might
somewhere
not be
that
a good match.
it's interesting, like the sensitivity, because I read somewhere that dogs actually have 400 times the sensitivity to smells that humans do. So maybe this is like
Mm,
some very
could be
evolved humans.
overwhelmed.
Can you just imagine,
Yeah.
like when you're 400 times more sensitive to certain smells, like
Yeah.
sometimes you take the subway and you go like, gosh,
You can't
if I
even
were a dog
enter the
right now, how do
subway.
dogs take the subway? I don't know. But so yeah, like so I guess a lot of again a lot of factors
Yeah, your diet, your hygiene,
influence that.
just the type of the body.
Right.
I heard like last weekend we were visiting a friend who is a raw vegetarian, and he was telling us how in some villages, I think in Vietnam, different women in separate families like mix the cabbage to make fermented cabbage,
Right.
and how even the taste of the cabbage will be different based on her germs, kind of that her
Oh,
own germs.
yes. Right,
And
right, right.
yeah, so
So,
like
so the
yeah, like
human chemistry affects, well,
even the
obviously,
product that we
everything.
create. Yes.
Like in Italy, they do like wine with feet, and I'm sure that that
Yes,
also has,
Stefan and
has
us,
to
yeah.
do with the taste of wine. Okay, well, so there you go. There you go. I guess lots of
Yeah,
factors.
totally true that, yeah, we all
Uh,
could taste
so
different.
it's not your imagination.
Yes,
People do
we
taste different,
acknowledge that fully.
depending on lots of things. What is the Kinsey scale? Right. So, well, for those, I guess, who may not have heard of the Kinsey scale, this, I believe, was Alfred Kinsey,
Alfred Kinsey,
who
yeah.
in 1948, I think, published so-called Kinsey reports. And right, it was a magazine called Human Sexual Behavior in Human Males. And then a few years later, he published the same reports in the Sexual Behavior of Human Females. So he did Kinsey reports for
Both, yes.
both men and women. But what,
hmm
for those who don't know about the Kinsey scale, what can you share?
it's a very good tool and very useful tool, especially if you're like struggling with your sexuality, with your identity, and you want to find more specific answers. So I do recommend to look at that scale together to some of the clients during sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, what's the scale? What's the scale
so
measuring?
so the scale it has like 7 gradations from 0 to 6, and it's measuring, it's going from 0 when Kinsey was labeling it as being like exclusively heterosexual, up to level 6 when you go like 7 items up on that scale when you're exclusively homosexual. But there is like different gradations in between that is good to be aware of. And he learned in the end of 1940s that when he was like screening, researching, testing so-called like normal American citizens
Mm-hmm.
who society assumed they were all heterosexual, happened that about 50% of males in his study had same-sex sexual experiences and
Wait, so in the
fantasies.
1940s,
Mhm.
half of all American men have had sex
who,
with a
who,
man.
who participated in his
Well, who
study.
participated in the study,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
some might say maybe he like chose specific people, but these were
I
randomly
don't.
selected
I'm
individuals, I'm
not
assuming.
really sure about the details of the study, but that's what I remember. So
Right.
50% had same-sex experiences and didn't consider themselves, many of them, homosexual.
Right. So the scale measured, have you had sex with other people of your own sex or not, right?
Gender, or it measured their thoughts, their fantasies, their sexual
Oh, I see.
experiences. If you really want to be in relationship of the person with the person of the same sex, all of those little nuances, and they reflected on the scale. Because, for example, if you're not 0, which is exclusively heterosexual, but like you're like at level 1, it's already like maybe you could allow the possibility to have some sexual experience with similar gender, but never happened to you. And let's say if you're like level 5 or level 6, it's more being exclusively homosexual, being attracted and having sexual experiences more with same gender people. And majority of the population happens to be currently like on that scale level like 2, 3, and 4,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the middle, and they could call themselves bisexual, straight, gay, or some of them don't want to have any labels at all. But the truth is that they either like occasional sexual experiences with the same gender, could be attracted to the same gender people, or want to be in the relationship with the same gender people.
So basically, the scale measured.
Like the level of what is sexual arousing for you, and how much does it actually have to exist in your life or exist in your life in real behaviors or in fantasies. That's how I
That's
would
interesting
say.
because, right, especially lately, there's a lot of awareness of actually non-binary genders, and actually there are
Yes.
many genders, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
like sexual behavior, also people I think now are really becoming more aware as the world, right, as
Yes.
humanity, of just the variety of sexual expressions. So it
And sexual identities,
sexual
yeah. So
identities.
many right now. I don't even know as of this year how many we have.
Right. And so I guess this was at the root of that coming into the awareness of
Mm-hmm.
self, that
Yeah.
as we were, as humanity exploring ourselves, human sexuality, this was the early version of just at least scientifically
Mm-hmm.
becoming aware of not
What
just,
else is
you're not just
possible?
gay or
Yes,
straight, right? Like,
yes.
or bi right in the middle. So it's a
And
scale, it's a
actually, at
continuum.
that time when he did that research, so pretty much gay people were looked as sick people, right?
Right.
And like that's why I said quote unquote normal population
Right.
was major, like most of
Those
them
who
were
were
in the
not
research. Not
identified as
sick.
gay, not sick.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
at that point, because I think it was,
Yes.
is it 1974, 76 when it finally was, when homosexuality
Acknowledged
was
uh,
taken out of the
of
registry
DSM-4
of
of psychiatric disorders.
psychiatric
I don't
disorders.
remember the year, but
I
something
think it
along
was in the
those
70s,
lines.
something
But
like that.
yeah, it was removed from the manual, from
So
psychiatric
until the
manual.
70s, it was considered to be a disease to be gay.
Treated, yes, to be, and
Right,
had to
to
be
be gay and had
treated.
to be treated.
Yeah,
Wow.
unfortunately. I mean,
So,
fortunately, we're not in that space anymore.
so in the 40s, this must have been a real revolutionary
Totally. Yes.
discovery. Okay, is it? Let me see.
So it could be a good date idea. You know, you could take Kinsey scale and discuss with your partner where you belong, where he or she belongs, and see how do you align. You know,
Okay.
understand more about each other's sexuality.
There you go. That's a fun date activity.
Yeah.
Who are you in this scale? Like, where do you land? My 5-year-old walked in on us. Ooh, when we were making love, and my wife was screaming. What should we do? Oof. What what should they do?
Like such a tricky question.
Right.
Gosh, 5-year-old, right? And the mom was screaming. And
Right.
so, well, first of all, I think it's super important to assure your child that nothing dangerous is happening, that it's
Right,
safe.
because if
Whatever is
mommy's
going on, it's safe.
screaming, like,
Yes.
because for them
Is
screaming is like
mom in
danger.
danger? Yes.
Right.
That the mom is safe, right? That's a priority. And then, if it's possible, the sooner the better to initiate a conversation with the child. It's just to see how much the child saw and how does he feel, and you know, just to normalize it as much as possible, and to say kind of that mommy and daddy express their affection to each other, and they were expressing affection to each other, love to each other in a very kind of enthusiastic way today.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I'm actually trying to picture this. Okay, so there's like actual, hardcore, not hardcore sex, but like there's actual like really full on sex happening. The 5-year-old child walks in, like, let's say it's a boy, and sees mommy basically, screaming. He
Yes.
assumes maybe he does or doesn't assume that it's from pain, but like that's like, what do you, if the child asks, like, what was that? Like, what do you say?
Well, you could say that it was sex and use your own language, not going into too many details to explain what is the experience. But I would say to really kind of to normalize what was seen as much as it's possible, say that mommy and daddy sometimes have those experiences and we usually have them in private. And also, it, it should not be really harmful for a child if he is aware that when people love each other, something like this could happen.
Well, like, what if they ask, like, what is that? Like, it's like, well, mommy, like, what did I see? What was it? So how does mommy answer? You know what I mean? Like, well, so if she says, well, this is something that adults do in private, like, well, why can't they do it in the street? A child might ask, because, like,
Yeah.
this is a time when they're learning about the world and
Yeah.
really discovering things. So what would you say?
Well, a 5-year-old, it
That
could be a
was
little
to a
bit
child.
challenging because, we could use the metaphor potentially, when you take your child, even like actually 5-year-old and 4 and 6-year-olds, they might understand that if you take a child to an amusement park, right, and they want to go to some rides, but they might not be allowed to go to specific ones because of their height.
They're not, like, tall enough.
They're not tall enough, so they kind of cannot have that experience. Maybe even use that metaphor and say, like, you really need, your body needs to develop more, you need to grow more, you need to be more mature, kind of to
So this is a
have
ride.
such an
This is
for
a
this
ride you take
ride.
when you're a little bit older. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess also you have to not understand, but like you have to well, again, you have to customize your conversation
Yes.
too. Do you have a really
Depending on
precocious
your
5-year-old? Is
child,
it a child who's
yes.
just like doesn't
Yeah.
is not at all aware of like these kinds of things? And
Yeah.
well, a 5-year-old probably nobody is. I don't know. But basically, you adapt it to your
Totally.
specific child.
There is like one book about pregnancy, for children. How do people get pregnant? And I like how they did explain it in that book. about intercourse, they don't get into any graphics over there, but they say, when mommy and daddy want to have a baby, they start a specific dance together. And then they show kind
And
of
mommy
the
screams. Okay.
the dance of the sperm, how the sperm travels
Right.
inside of the female body. So anyway, so
Okay.
maybe like to even describe it as some special dance.
Special dance. Okay.
Hmm.
All right.
Dance of love.
But do you in general do you recommend speaking to children about sex? And if yes, then how old, from what age do you think is it appropriate to talk to children about sex in any shape or form?
Some parents started like really early with their kids, and
Early
kids
like
get
what?
like overwhelmed, like 4, 5, 6, and
That's
it also depends the language
yeah.
that parents are using. I would say kind of until children would start asking you themselves,
Right.
and that will be your sign that it's
See,
time to start
that's good
responding,
advice.
right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
why do you want to initiate this information when you have a very little child and you're not asking any questions? Could be like confusing and
Right.
you know
Take your cues from your child.
dysregulating.
If your child
Yes.
exhibits curiosity, like sometimes children like play doctor, right? Like they play
Yeah.
with each other's genitals, and
Mm-hmm.
that happens, I think, really early in life,
Yeah.
like what, 2, 3, 4, 4,
Four and
5, or like
five
I
and
don't know, two.
six.
I don't have children, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But like a 2, I guess they don't. But
No, no,
like
no.
when 4, 5, 6, I guess when they
Yeah.
play doctor. Okay, and then so maybe that's if they come with questions, that would be a good
Yeah.
time to say,
Yeah.
well, there are different parts,
Genital
right?
Forms and shapes of genitals.
Right,
That's
right,
what
right,
boys have. That's what girls have, and so on and so forth. And yeah, and again to normalize it for them as much
right.
as possible, so they don't uh, grow up feeling any shame or guilt about it. And I have cases with that. Like recently, I was working with the lady who has a lot of shame and guilt about playing the doctor. I was like, well, but so
Oh,
many.
you mean like she was role playing with her
No, no, no,
partner?
no, no, no. She when she was a little girl, she
Oh, I
played
see.
doctor
She
with
played doctor with
peers. Yeah,
peers, but she feels ashamed about it.
as an adult,
Right.
she still feels like it was harmful to other children. I was like, well, a lot of children really do explore this
Wow.
way, and yeah, to really normalize
So
it.
she
If
carried it
people all of these
all
years,
those years into adulthood, and she still
yes,
feels kind of
hmm
vulnerable about that,
more than that, trauma,
traumatized by that.
trauma.
Wow.
Yeah, even
Wow.
more than just vulnerable. Yeah.
So again, I think it's
So it's a
important for
very
us to notice and
sensitive, very
sensitively
vulnerable
address these
topic.
vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Um, uh, how can I create more excitement and arousal with my partner? Why did we have much more arousal when we were in the long distance relationship, and why is it so different now after we got married? How would you answer that?
It sounds actually a lot like some people that I work with, and it's fascinating because so it could be so confusing for so many people when it was so exciting, right? How they say over here, and so easy and so flowless, flowing, right?
Flowing and flawless. I guess
Flawless,
flawless is like
both.
without a flaw, right?
Yes. And all of a sudden, right after you move in together, you get married, everything is legalized, like, oh, and then nothing happens. And no sexual intimacy sometimes for like a couple of years, sometimes more than a couple of years. But then I'm always curious, what really helped initially. And what comes to mind that um, I really like the work of a very famous sexologist, Jack Morin. He was writing, he identified um, 4 cornerstones of eroticism. And those are factors that are not always necessary to feel the arousal, but they could really intensify the level of arousal for people. So, and that's why I'm asking questions. So, what was going on? How you met? What was the initial attraction about? And then certain things show up that help me really understand if those 4 corners of eroticism played the role.
Well, what are the
And
4
yeah,
cornerstones?
okay, sorry, like I'm being vague so far. So from what I remember, the first one would be longing and anticipation.
Hmm.
And I could maybe start giving some short examples right away. So when you really kind of can't have what you want, and you need to wait for a long time. I think in this case you were describing to
They
me
had a long distance
long distance.
relationship,
Oh, so
so
imagine how much longing can happen.
Right.
When you're like, let's say, to different continents or even to different states, right? You can't be with each other too often. You need to figure out how we could get reunited again, and maybe we need to wait for 6 months.
Right.
A lot of longing is happening
Right.
here, right?
And then the person moves in and they're like there all the time, and
yeah,
you
it's
kind of
not interesting
yeah
anymore, right? So,
yeah
and if it was the initial part of that initial strong attraction, that distance and not being able to be together too easy, and now it's too easy. So
Okay, so what are the other
okay,
cornerstones?
so another one would be breaking the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it could be multiple things. It could be doing something what is not acceptable, permissible in the society, like having like sex at the beach, right? Or having sex in the park.
Like in a public place where
In
you're not
public,
supposed to.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, where there is a possibility of being
Like a little
caught,
fear, a little bit of a
yeah, being
yeah
punished.
danger.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we call it like the naughtiness
Right.
factor
All
that
right.
you really enjoy
So you
playing
gotta like
with that
long for each other,
edge.
not be oversaturated. You gotta like sort of kind of break the rules a little, like a little bit of danger. What
Yeah,
else?
well, but that breaking the rules would be also when you have a partner who is not available to you, like having a lover, right? Especially who is married, could be even more arousing if he or she is married, because you
Well,
definitely
they're
cannot be with you, right?
these people are married to each other, so
Oh, okay, okay. So sorry, but even though they're married to each other, I remember some other situation when, let's say, you meet in the workplace, and part of
right,
the policy, you cannot date anybody in your workplace,
right,
or you cannot date your boss, and
right.
you want to break that rule.
So
It's
breaking the
very
rules is
enticing.
arousing. What else?
Yes. Um, so what else? What else? What else? Long anticipation, breaking the rules, the search of power. So it could be very enticing for some people to feel the power of the partner, either to be dominated by them or to really know that the person makes a lot of money, takes a very high upscale kind of position in the company. Or it could be a fantasy where it could be a huge turn on. For example, she could be fantasizing that this, that big and black and rich strong man is like kidnapping you and taking you on the sailboat to some to some island, and then he ties you up so you cannot move, and then he gives you oral sex and please, like it could be like
So
just
basically, you're talking
being
about like
overpowered by
having
somebody.
power. So basically, if you perceive your partner as powerful, and then
Yes,
kind of you're either they're overpowering you or you're kind of overpowering them, and
yes,
overpowering power makes you feel
yeah,
kind of aroused.
play,
That,
yes,
that kind of like
playing with the
power
power.
play, like basically
Yes.
playing with the concept of
Mm-hmm.
power.
Yes.
Okay, well, look, these are the things that you're saying increase eroticism. So their question is, well,
You know what? I just remembered one more
yeah,
quote that is kind of related to power. Can I
yeah,
say that
sure,
one? Um, I don't know who it belongs to, but they say like everything in our life is about sex, except sex itself, because sex is about power.
okay,
So, and it's a lot of that
interesting.
that happens in sexual relationships.
I'm thinking about it because I'm like, is it really about power? Like, because sometimes people can just like so get lost in each other. It's not a like. I'm just trying to think of like my personal experience. Like,
Hmm.
is it always about being overpowered or overpowering somebody? Is it always about the power play?
I think it is. I think it is. And we believe, like, when I work with couples, those people, those partners, let's say, who don't want to have sex, they have more power in the relationship. Because if you're the one who really wants to have sex
If
and
you
you're
hold the
being
keys to
limited,
whether we're having sex or not, then
yeah,
that's a form of power. So
yeah,
it's
who
that
the
kind of
one
a
who is refusing,
yeah.
that one has
Yeah.
more power. Hmm.
Well, so what would you recommend for these people who are okay? So these are some factors that increase the like eroticism in a
Yes,
relationship. So the question is like, look, we used to be really hot for each other, and now we're like married, and I'm assuming no longer in a long distance relationship. So they're like now
yes,
moved in,
yeah.
living together. Like, well, what do we do? How do we get back some of that
Well,
attraction?
I usually try to take, when I work with real people talking to me about it, I take very thorough sexual history. I try to figure out what was those turn-ons previously and see if it's possible to recreate any of that right now, how to create a little bit more distance during daytime, and less of that enmeshment where like no air
So creating
is
that
flowing.
longing anticipation,
Yes,
like
yes.
to make you a little bit more hungry for it.
Yeah,
And
and actually, in terms of anticipation, like some gender difference here, a lot of women will tell you that they rarely could be much more turned on when a partner could build anticipation by extended foreplay, by maybe teasing, promising something, and not giving it right away. And a lot of guys, it drives them crazy. They get so frustrated. They don't like often like building
right.
anticipation, like
But
just
like you can build anticipation not in like, oh, we're gonna have it, we're gonna have it, we're gonna have it, and now we're having it.
no.
Maybe you can like start the naughty texts like
In
during the
advance,
day,
yeah,
like
in the
from
morning,
work,
in the
like in
morning.
the office, like we're like sexting
Yeah,
each other like
yeah,
during work
yeah. A
hours,
lot
right?
of women say like,
And that
I want
leads
the
to
foreplay like to begin in the morning until you get to my body
that's
in
a
the
long
evening. Yeah,
journey.
yeah.
But
But if you really want to create some fireworks, why not?
wow.
You know.
Right, and then like, if you're like basically at work and you're sexting at work and you're trying to, build that excitement, so it's both building anticipation and maybe like breaking some rules kind of
Yeah,
thing.
totally. So you're already combining two of those cornerstones, and there's like a Jack Moore, and he came up with this nice equation that I love as well. Obstacles plus attraction equals excitement. So that's a really cool formula for everybody to remember. So if you want to spice it up a little bit or bring back something that is lost, so think about how to create a little bit of obstacles, difficulty to meet or to create any erotic experience, and figure out how to spurse it with some excitement as well, some attraction, like to make yourself either more looking better, different, or create something enticing, and then it could create high level of excitement
So you're
potentially.
kind of like you do things to to be more attractive to the partner, and then but then like you come up with some obstacles maybe, and then like
Yes,
that attraction
make
and
it
obstacles that
difficult,
like gets
playing
that
hard or whatever
together or
you're
whatever. Yeah,
doing.
okay, so that then builds excitement.
Actually, another good example here about taking obstacles, then attraction, and how to create excitement. So one of the things I forgot on the list, number 4, was overcoming ambivalence. And a
What
quick
does that mean?
example, overcoming ambivalence, and that's actually exactly that. Obstacles plus attraction equals to excitement. For example,
Well, ambivalence isn't like, what do I want it, do I not want it? Like, what's the
yes, you can
in your
decide,
partner?
or in the experience that maybe you want to consider but you're scared, but you're curious about it, it could be attractive for you. So like, let's take anal sex, right?
Right.
Maybe like she wants to have anal sex experience, and she's curious about it, right? She's attracted to this idea, but also all of your friends are saying like, oh, it will be painful. It was painful for all of them, they never enjoyed. So she feels like it's like some obstacle with that, like she's not sure. But if she was going to overcome that ambivalence and try, and actually she might really enjoy, and it could create even higher level of excitement, like, oh, I didn't even anticipate it, right? But it's actually fun, and then now I want it all the time.
Right. So
Briefly
it's kind of like
speaking.
I want it, but I'm afraid of it. I want it, but I'm
Yes.
afraid of that kind of ambivalence.
Yes.
So overcoming that or facing that
Yes.
may again like provide
Totally.
some excitement.
Totally.
Well, look, these like we were saying, these cornerstones of attraction. I guess they're individual, right? They don't apply in equal measure to all. So
No,
I
not at
guess
all.
how do we know which ones will work for us more than others?
Well, first of all, you don't have to use them. You don't have to even have them. Because if in your couple you have like very good physical attraction to begin with, good chemistry, good sexual vitality,
Just
good. Yeah,
enjoy
you
it.
just enjoy it, good to go, right?
Right.
But if you want to kind of do a little bit more of self-reflection to see what might be applicable to you on that list of 4 items, you could do like a little self-reflection exercise. You want me to tell you?
Sure.
Okay, so think, and to all of you as well. So think about your 3 top erotic experiences, most highly state of arousal, right? And either you rarely had them in your life, or maybe you read in the book and you got really turned on. Maybe it's your fantasy. Just write about like a page about each of those experiences.
And
Three,
what made them
three.
like hot
Yeah.
for you?
Yes, all of the details, like maybe some smells or environment in which you were? Was it like some secluded island? Was it in the middle of the city? What were the conditions, right? What happened to you? Was it with somebody who you really trust and you've been with that person for a long time? Or maybe it's a stranger, maybe it's a forbidden partner, right?
Right.
And write about all of this, and then see if there is any common theme through all of those three experiences. Usually it is.
Right.
And
That's a
then
good.
and then it will be your stuff that you could use
Right.
for yourself, like, oh, I know, like if I want to have more fun on this date with my maybe current boyfriend, right? Like, oh, let me create some rule he might I might want to break, something
Right.
that
Some
we're not
element of like
allowed to do,
danger
right?
or excitement.
Hmm.
Well, look, this, human sexuality is truly, it's a topic that is endless. And I think if there is any like common thread
True,
in whatever you're
yes.
saying is like keep exploring, keep learning, keep communicating. Do you have any sort of kind of like parting advice for our viewers about how to improve their sex life in general?
Well, I think we gave already many tips today, right, about how to
Yeah.
improve sex life in general. And one of the last tips I would say, we really hold back with so many things in our lives in general. So, love making should not be one of those. Just really allow yourself and allow that sexual expressiveness and fully enjoy it. Why to hold?
Don't hold
Well,
back.
don't
This
hold
is the one
back.
area where you
Yes.
shouldn't, right?
Yes.
Well, right, because if not the success, but if the degree of enjoyment in sexual activity, if the more, because if everything is super personal, if everything is very personal,
Yeah.
right? So the more specific and the more fully you express yourself, the more chances of your partner,
To be more
or
aligned,
partners to be more
aligned.
aligned with what it
Yeah.
is that you enjoy. So
That works for two of you.
unless you
Yes.
are fully like expressive, unless you don't hold back and express yourself, that's when they'll know what works for you, what doesn't, and
Yeah.
what are some of the things you can change. And I guess for
Exactly.
myself, I would just really add that I think it's important as you communicate, as you express yourself, to really just be aware of the other person, to be respectful, to listen to them, as focused, as good
Totally.
as it is for you to
Yes.
express yourself and truly like communicate what it is that you like. I mean, also listen, to the others and respect each other. And
Yeah.
I like your advice. Just enjoy it as much as you can, and um, then you'll have more chances of
That
having an
fulfillment.
enjoyable,
Yes.
enjoyable sexual life. Well, this was a wonderful conversation with our
Yes.
sexpert.
And it was a
Um,
pleasure. We
uh,
talked about pleasure, and it was a
it's a
pleasure
pleasure to
to
talk
be
about
here.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pleasure to talk
Well,
about pleasure. I love that one.
yeah. And
That's a good quote.
we hope you learned some things, and I guess keep exploring. This was Natliya Rusetskaya, our sexpert today. I'm Sergey Gordeev, and we wish you a wonderful and enjoyable and a healthy sex life and life in general. So have
Very much so.
very much so. Enjoy.
Bye.